themselves, because truly they really are their own worst enemies. The problem is this stuff doesn't make it to the mainstream media news brainwashing outlets because it doesn't help their agenda being advanced. Israel has to be demonized. Number 9, the Israeli Navy was met, and these Muslims, why wasn't there absolute total public outcry against this coward who held up a baby on TV saying, no, this is not the way we want to advance our agenda. Allah or not. We don't want to use babies as human shields in order to advance our agenda. But I don't think there was any public outcry. It was all okay as long as Allah's agenda was advanced. I mean, that's pathetic. That is beyond pathetic. Number 9, the Israeli Navy was met with violent opposition. 2 pistols were found in the hands of protesters, and over a dozen Israeli personnel were hospitalized, some in critical condition. 1 militant snatched a gun from an Israeli commando and opened fire. The Navy described being met by a lynching party. And I give you, again, the links right here. You can watch the video if you want. Number 10, in Ashdod, the flotilla's cargo would have been offloaded and humanitarian items would have been transferred overland to Gaza in accordance with standard operating procedures. It's their country. They have a right to conduct these types of things the way that they see fit. We don't have a right to impose our will on them. The participants of the flotilla will be subjected to immigration procedures applicable in the cases of an attempted illegal entry. Well, I think Israel's pretty much already let most of them go, just to avoid any further international incidents. Now, could you imagine if it was Israelis doing this in one of these Muslim countries? All the Israelis would have been annihilated and killed, and they would have no apologies given whatsoever. The Muslims would be proud. Allah has triumphed, and we have advanced, and praise be to Allah is what they'd be saying. And there'd be no real public outcry. Oh, they shouldn't have killed all those poor Israelites. But, they have such pent-up frustrations over the way they've been treated by this tiny little sliver of land called Israel for all these years, and all the terrible, horrific things they've had to endure at the hands of the Israelis, that it's no wonder, that they've done this. That's what they would have said, probably. It's okay. It's okay for the Israelis to die. In other words. Number 11, few reports have focused on the 2 organizations involved in the flotilla. Now, I added this in because I found this out separately. And I give you the links here to check it out further. So these are the 2 organizations involved in the flotilla, because I wanted to know who was behind the flotilla. They are the IHH, which I have mentioned, which was the guy, the head of the chairman, was the guy that was bragging about holding up the baby in front of him and saying, this is a message to you, Israel. This is what you're going to be met with. Ooh, babies. Ooh, how intimidating. So we'll have to kill the babies to get to the Muslims. Man, what bravery. What bravery on those Muslims' parts. So, they are the IHH, the Foundation for Human Rights and Freedoms of Humanitarian Relief, billed as a, quote, charity group from Turkey, and Free Gaza. An organization of leftist radicals who wish to foment violence against Israel. This is what I was expecting to hear. The IHH is a front group with a history of supplying weapons to Islamic terrorist groups in the region. Now, you don't think Israel already knew this? They admitted who they were. They know they have a history of supplying terrorist weapons, supplying weapons to Islamic terrorist groups in the region. I would think, yeah, you would really want to search that ship closely. And think about this. They found weapons, and they did find a lot of stuff on board. Well, if you were them and you knew you had weapons and you knew you had a lot to hide on board your ship, wouldn't you want to meet these IDF forces with a lot of violence and resistance so that they would never find this stuff? Sure you would. That's why. That's part of the reason they did it as well. So this group has a history of supplying weapons to the Islamic terrorist groups in the region. Even the French recognized this group as a front for terrorists. And again, the chairman of the group is the same guy that held the baby up. This is how insane these people are. They're insane. They're demonically possessed. these Muslims at these terrorist levels. They are demonically possessed. They are insane. What other conclusion could you come to? It's pure evil. And we're supposed to resist evil as Christians. This is pure evil. And I mean resisting primarily in prayer, fasting, and these types of things. The weapons of our warfare are not carnal, but mighty through the pulling down of strongholds. These people are demonically, totally bound up. And again, if it be possible, their souls be saved. I'm not wishing them to devil's hell. But most of them are going to end up there according to the Bible because of what the Bible says. Broad is the way which leads to destruction. Most of these people are so demonically taken over and infested and possessed that, most of them aren't going to get saved. And unfortunately, that's the case for most of the planet as well. I wish it wasn't so, but, it doesn't mean we shouldn't pray for them, but I do not pray for them to prosper in wickedness. And what they're doing is pure wickedness. When wickedness is exposed and when wickedness is judged in the Bible, if you look at the Bible, good things always happen. Really positive things, like people getting saved. Ananias and Sapphira. They were both struck dead. What was the fruit of that? That was God's judgment. What was the fruit? Many were saved and added to the fold. Great fear fell upon the camp. These types of things. Fear of God. Many were saved. Sounds like a good thing to me. Well, when God judges wickedness, it's always a positive thing. Always. So, God's judgment is something that needs to happen in this situation in order for some of these positive things to happen from a biblical standpoint. Free Gaza was founded in 2008 to provoke Israel for Islamists in the Gaza Strip. That's why Free Gaza, which is this organization that came in Flotilla, was founded to provoke Israel. What a great reason to form an organization. The only reason we formed is because we want to provoke this other group. Wow, at least, you can't question their intentions, Their heart was in the right place, at least. Nothing else. And it was specifically to provoke Israel for the Islamists in the Gaza Strip. What did they do just now? They did that exact thing, their mission statement. Involved in the founding of this were former Weather Underground domestic terrorist Bill Ayers and his wife Bernadine Dorn, and Jody Evans, founder of Code Pink, which is an anti-military, anti-American organization. Code Pink barges into congressional hearings and does whatever it can to subvert our efforts against Islamic terrorism around the world. President Obama began his political career in the living room of Bill Ayers and Bernadine Dorn. Ayers had been involved in the bombing of the Pentagon and the New York City Police Department in the 1970s during the Vietnam War. Both had gone underground for many years to avoid capture for their terrorist activities. Isn't that special? Why would that surprise us any? Summing it up, inevitably Israel will be portrayed as brutal and unconcerned for human rights of the victims or the victims of the conflict. Hamas and the many other Islamic terror organizations play the Western world, its press, and its governments masterfully. Well, let me just say this. So much of their act, I don't want to give them that much credit. I really don't. Because so many of their tactics and so many of these people are so stupid. The only way it could come off as playing the Western world and its press and its governments masterfully if it wasn't totally manipulated in the news and we only saw one side of the story. If we saw what really was going on, they wouldn't be able to do any of this. There would be a reverse outcry against the Islamic world, which is where it should be. But no, it's against Israel. The end result is that Israel, as so often, is caught in a no-win situation and must ultimately use force to stop the aggression and depredations of the Hamas terror organization. Whether Hamas and the Islamists unleash incessant rocket fire into Israeli civilian towns, kidnap Israeli soldiers, inflict terror attacks, or bring a flotilla of so-called peace activists to Gaza, Israel is brought to a position that it must act. It has no choice. Not to do so is ultimately to commit national suicide. Sadly, the protesters and over a dozen Israeli personnel were hospitalized, some in critical condition. One militant snatched a gun from an Israeli commando and opened fire. The Navy described being met by a lynching party. And I give you, again, the links right here. You can watch the video if you want. Number 10. In Ashdod, the flotilla's cargo would have been offloaded and humanitarian items would have been transferred overland to Gaza in accordance with standard operating procedures. It's their country. They have a right to conduct these types of things the way that they see fit. We don't have a right to impose in order to advance our agenda, but I don't think there was any public outcry. It was all okay as long as Allah's agenda was advanced. I mean, that's pathetic. That is beyond pathetic. Number 9, the Israeli Navy was met with violent opposition. 2 pistols were found in the hands of... And these Muslims, why wasn't there absolute total public outcry against this coward who held up a baby on TV saying, no, this is not the way we want to advance our agenda. Allah or not. We don't want to use babies as human shields in themselves, because truly they really are their own worst enemies. The problem is this stuff doesn't make it to the mainstream media news brainwashing outlets because it doesn't help their agenda being advanced. Israel has to be demonized. Number 9, the Israeli Navy was met